The galaxy was at peace, not because it had chosen peace, but because it feared the alternative. With the formation of the Galactic Accord, wars had stopped overnight. Ancient rivalries were buried. No empire dared to rise against another, not when the silent hand of humanity watched from the shadows. But peace was not the same as freedom. Across the stars, whispers grew. Some species thrived under the new order, adapting to humanity's rule. Others, especially the once mighty empires, felt chained. They obeyed, but deep inside, their resentment festered. The Cathari warlords, once the most feared warriors in the galaxy, now sat in the shadows of their ruined empire, their blades rusting. The Ulnari, who had once ruled with cunning, found themselves reduced to obedient diplomats. Even the Galactic Council, once the ultimate authority, now existed only as a puppet regime, answering to humanity. And yet, among the silence, there was a question that none dared to ask aloud. Where was humanity? For all their power, for all their terrifying precision, humanity had not claimed a throne. They had not taken planets. They had not demanded tribute. They had simply disappeared. The Zervith Chancellor, one of the few surviving leaders from before humanity's return, sat in his darkened chambers, staring at reports. Entire human fleets had gone silent. Their planets were locked behind impenetrable defenses. Their soldiers, those ghosts that had wiped out entire armies, were no longer seen. It was as if humanity had stepped back into the void from which they had emerged. And that terrified him even more. Across the stars, factions whispered of rebellion. In secret chambers, warlords plotted in hushed voices. They did not speak of victory. They only spoke of survival. Because one truth remained. If humanity returned again, it would not be to bring peace. It would be to end everything. The galaxy had changed. For the first time in its long history, it was no longer ruled by the strongest fleets or the oldest empires. It was ruled by fear, the fear of humanity. Once, the Galactic Council had been the highest authority, dictating the fate of entire star systems. Now, it was nothing more than a relic of the past. Its remaining members lived as prisoners, not behind bars, but within the very laws humanity had written. They obeyed because they knew the alternative: disappearance. The message had been clear. Humanity did not seek power. They did not crave territory. They sought balance, on their own terms. On Kelos IV, the newly formed Galactic Accord gathered. Dozens of alien races, once bitter enemies, now sat side by side, unified by the same unshakable terror. The hall was silent as a human envoy took the central podium. He did not wear armor. He carried no weapons, and yet his presence was more terrifying than any warship. "We are not your conquerors," he said, his voice calm but absolute. "We are your reminder." The gathered leaders did not dare to speak. For centuries, you ruled with arrogance, believing yourselves untouchable. You erased histories. You crushed those who were weaker. You thought time would bury your sins. The envoy's eyes swept over them, and many lowered their gaze. "But time did not erase us," he continued. "It forged us. It made us into something you could never defeat." A deep, suffocating silence filled the hall. "From this day forward, war will no longer decide the fate of the galaxy," the envoy declared. "There will be order. True order." The Chancellor of the Zervath hesitated. Then, with great reluctance, he spoke. "And if we refuse?" The envoy did not answer immediately. He did not have to. Everyone in the room already knew the answer. The Ulnari representative, still trembling from their last encounter with humanity, whispered, "Then we vanish, like the others." The human envoy nodded once. Exactly. The choice was clear. By the end of the meeting, the Galactic Accord was signed, ensuring peace across the stars. It was not an agreement between equals. It was humanity's will, carved into law. The universe had tried to forget humanity. Now, it would forever remember them. The galaxy braced itself for war. Fleets were mobilized. Patrols increased. Every major empire, from the ruthless Ketheri to the calculating Ulnari, launched desperate search efforts. Spies infiltrated neutral zones. Mercenaries and bounty hunters were promised riches beyond imagination to find the ghosts of Earth. But humanity remained unseen. Days passed, then weeks. The attacks stopped. The once unstoppable force that had shaken the stars had vanished. Some believed it had been a bluff, that humanity had returned in anger, only to realize they lacked the numbers to fight a true war. And then the first empire fell. The Varnak Dominion, a race of towering insectoid creatures, had ruled over dozens of worlds through fear and control. Their leaders sat safely within their fortress world, untouched by war for centuries. They believed their strength was absolute. Until one night, when their capital planet went silent. No distress calls, no explosions, no warnings. One moment, the Varnak homeworld was a thriving center of power. The next, it was dead. When a Ketheri scout fleet was sent to investigate, they found the planet intact. Cities still stood. Skyscrapers reached toward the sky. But no one was there. Not a single living being remained. Ships were docked but abandoned. Food sat untouched on tables. It was as if the entire population had simply ceased to exist. A single message was left behind, carved into the very walls of the Varnak High Council chamber. For the forgotten. The galaxy panicked. Entire fleets were recalled. Empires turned inward, fortifying their worlds. Rulers who had once spoken of crushing humanity now whispered of appeasement. But fear was not enough to stop them. The Ulnari Dominion decided to strike back. If they could not find humanity, they would force them to reveal themselves. They chose Sol 3. Humanity's long-abandoned homeworld, Earth, had been nothing but a ruin for centuries. The wars that had nearly driven humans to extinction had left it a dead rock. The Ulnari believed that even if humans had returned, they would never have truly abandoned their birthplace. So they sent a fleet. Not just any fleet, a demonstration of force. Hundreds of warships surrounded the ruined Earth, weapons armed, ready to obliterate anything that moved. A single transmission was broadcast across the stars. "We hold your world hostage. Show yourselves, or we will reduce it to dust." Silence. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The Ulnari grew bolder. Their flagship moved closer, its weapons locking onto the ruins below. And then, a shadow appeared in space. One moment, there was nothing but the cold void. The next, a ship unlike anything the Ulnari had ever seen emerge. It wasn't massive like the Empire's dreadnoughts. It didn't bristle with weapons or shields. It was small, sleek, and it moved without a sound, without a trace of an energy signature. The Ulnari flagship's alarm screamed. Every system shut down at once. Weapons offline, engines offline. The entire fleet found itself paralyzed, held in place as if by an invisible force. Then a transmission played across every ship, a human voice, cold and final. "Earth is not yours to touch." The war had begun. The galaxy trembled. It was no longer a question of if humanity had returned, but why, and what they intended to do next. The whispers of their presence spread like a storm, and now, no empire, no warlord, no ruling class felt safe. The attacks continued, precise and merciless. A Varnak slave auction, held in secret on a remote asteroid, was erased in an instant. Security footage recovered from the wreckage showed nothing, only darkness, then static. When reinforcements arrived, they found the cages empty, the guards gone, and a single message burned into the rock. No more chains. A fleet belonging to the Ketheri Empire, known for its brutal planetary suppressions, was in the middle of a routine pacification when the lights on their flagships flickered. For 30 seconds, their entire system went dark. When the power returned, their weapons were offline and their ships drifted, helpless. A moment later, a transmission played across every screen. A single human voice, calm, steady, unshaken. You call it pacification. We call it genocide. There will be no more. Then their targeting systems activated against their own fleet. Chaos erupted as the Ketheri ships fired on one another, their systems hijacked. By the time they regained control, half their fleet was gone. No one knew how humanity was doing this. Their ships moved without detection. Their attacks left no trace. They were a phantom force, appearing where they pleased and vanishing before anyone could respond. The galaxy's most powerful empires, the rulers of trillions, were powerless. In the heart of the Galactic Senate, an emergency meeting was held. The faces of the galaxy's most feared leaders were drawn with unease, their voices hushed with uncertainty. "We cannot allow this to continue," Supreme Chancellor Evol said, his scaled hands gripping the edge of the table. "They are destabilizing everything. They are undoing centuries of order. This is not war," an Ulnari warlord growled. "This is punishment. Punishment." The word settled over the chamber like a weight. For too long, the rulers of the stars had believed themselves untouchable. They had crushed rebellions, enslaved entire species, burned worlds to make examples of those who defied them. And now, humanity had returned, not as conquerors, not as invaders, but as executioners. The Council made its decision. Every fleet, every warship, every assassin and mercenary available was given a single mission: find humanity. Find them, hunt them, and end this before it was too late. But deep in the void, where no empire's influence could reach, the last remnants of humanity stood on the bridge of their silent, unstoppable warship. And as the galaxy prepared for war, the humans simply watched, waiting. Because they knew something the galaxy did not. This was only the beginning. You said. The Galactic Senate fell into chaos. The message, "We remember everything," flashed across every terminal, every broadcast, every secured military channel. No encryption could block it. No firewalls could stop it. It was not just a message. It was a warning, a declaration. The ship hovered in orbit, silent, unmoving. The great empires, the rulers of the galaxy, watched in fear. This was not supposed to happen. Humanity was supposed to be gone. The species they had exiled, erased, and forgotten had returned, and no one knew what they wanted. The Senate called for immediate action. Their fleets, some of the most powerful armadas in the known universe, moved into position. Hundreds of ships surrounded the lone vessel, weapons charged, targeting systems locked. The order was simple: destroy it. Admiral Velcor of the Zadrak Dominion, a veteran of countless battles, gave the command. Energy cannons lit up the darkness. Missile barrages streaked toward the silent ship. Explosions filled the void. And when the fire and light faded, the human ship remained, untouched. No debris, no damage, not even a ripple in its dark hull. Admiral Velcor stared in disbelief. His sensors insisted the target was still there, unaffected by the firepower of an entire fleet. Then, for the first time, the human vessel moved. It was instant. One moment, it was still. The next, it was behind them. Panic surged through the fleet as alarms screamed across every ship. Targeting systems failed. Navigation collapsed. Communications turned to static. One by one, their engines shut down. Velcor barely had time to react before his ship's lights flickered. Then darkness. The entire fleet, the pride of the Dominion, was now dead in space. Then the voice came again, smooth, calm, and absolute. "We have watched. We have waited. And now, we have returned." The Admiral's blood ran cold. The galaxy had always feared humanity's rage. The stories of their defiance, their ingenuity, and their unbreakable will were legend, even after their exile. But no one had truly believed those myths. They were just stories to scare cadets. But now, they were real. The ship pulsed once, a silent signal, and then it was gone. No jump signature, no warp disturbance. just vanished. As the fleet drifted helplessly, one last message burned itself into the Dominion's central network, spreading across every world, every colony, every military outpost. You tried to erase us. Now we will remind you who we are. The Senate, the Dominion, and every empire in the galaxy felt a cold, sinking realization settle upon them. Humanity was back, and they were unstoppable. The galaxy was broken. Empires that had stood for thousands of years now trembled like frightened prey. Rulers who once commanded entire star systems now whispered in fear. The mighty fleets that had once crushed civilizations now drifted empty, their crews erased before they could even fight back. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never forget them again. Across the void, on a nameless moon, the last surviving members of the Galactic Council gathered in secret. The once great leaders, whose voices had shaped the fate of trillions, now spoke in hushed, desperate tones. "We must make peace," the Zervath Chancellor said. His many eyes darted around, as if expecting shadows to move. "If we do not, we will be next." The Kethari warlord, once proud, now looked haunted. "Peace? How do you make peace with ghosts?" The Ulnari representative, trembling in his chair, whispered, "They could have killed us all. But they haven't. Why?" For a moment, silence. Then a new voice, one that should not have been there. "You never understood us." The room froze. The shadows shifted, and from the darkness, they appeared. Humans. Not an army. Not a fleet. Just two figures, standing at the center of the chamber as if they had always been there. No alarms had sounded. No security had been triggered. And yet, they had arrived. The Chancellor tried to speak, but his throat had gone dry. The first human took a step forward. Their voice was calm, yet it cut deeper than any blade. "You thought erasing us would be enough. That time would make you forget." The second human's voice was filled with something colder, something final. "But time made us stronger. And now we decide what happens next." The leaders of the galaxy, once gods among the stars, now knelt before the two humans. It was not a demand. It was instinct. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council did not rule. Humanity did. And in the silence of space, a final message was sent across the stars. A warning, a promise, a truth that no species would ever dare ignore again. The universe forgot about us, but now we're back. And we are unstoppable. The galaxy would never forget them again. The galaxy was no longer ruled by emperors, warlords, or ancient bloodlines. It was ruled by fear. Every empire, from the brutal Kethari to the cunning Ulnari, once believed themselves untouchable. Their fleets had conquered worlds. Their armies had crushed rebellions. They had rewritten history itself. But now, history was rewriting them. It started with whispers, entire fleets vanishing in the void. Fortress worlds, untouched for centuries, found their defenses offline, their rulers dead before they even knew they were under attack. A dozen lesser empires collapsed overnight, not from war, but from uncertainty. No one knew when humanity would strike next. And that was the true horror. There were no demands, no declarations of war, no grand speeches. Humanity did not negotiate. They did not come to conquer. They came for revenge. On the war-torn world of Gorath Prime, the Kethari High Lord sat within his palace, surrounded by warriors, each one bred for battle. No force had ever breached these walls. No enemy had ever made it past his guards. But that night, he awoke to silence. His guards were gone. Not dead. Gone. Their weapons were still there. Their armor lay discarded. But the warriors themselves had been erased from existence. A slow, creeping terror filled the High Lord's chest. He had seen empires burn to the ground, had heard the screams of billions as planets fell before his fleet. But never, not once, had he felt powerless. The shadows moved. And then he heard it, a single voice whispering from the darkness. "Do you remember us now? By morning, the High Lord was found dead, and with him, the entire Cathari War Council. No alarms had been triggered. No ships had entered orbit. There was no explanation. Only the same message carved into the iron walls of the palace. For the forgotten. The Galactic Council collapsed in fear. Rulers who had once declared war without hesitation now spoke only in whispers. Treaties were signed in desperation. Empires, once enemies, huddled together like frightened children, hoping that by uniting, they could somehow survive. But it was too late. The war was no longer theirs to fight. Humanity had already won, and the galaxy would never forget them again. You said. The distress signal was weak, a faint echo in the endless void of space. It flickered through forgotten channels, bouncing between long-abandoned satellites and derelict relay stations. Most of the galactic empires ignored it. Just another lost transmission, they thought. But a few curious minds traced its origin, only to find something impossible, something that should not exist. In the grand halls of the Galactic Senate, whispers turned into murmurs, and murmurs into fear. The signal came from a system that had been uninhabited for centuries, a system where nothing was supposed to remain. The records were clear. Humanity had been exiled, stripped of its worlds, and left to die in the cold silence of deep space. There were no humans left. That was what history said. That was what everyone believed. Yet here it was, a transmission carrying a message encoded in a long-dead language. Ancient scholars recognized it. Military historians flinched when they translated it. It was Terran Standard, the forgotten tongue of a species that had once shaken the stars. The message was simple, chilling in its clarity. You forgot about us. That was a mistake. The Senate dismissed it as a hoax. Some obscure pirate faction, perhaps. Maybe an old AI system malfunctioning. The galaxy was vast, and lost signals resurfaced from time to time. But others were not so sure. Patrol ships were sent to investigate. Their order simple: confirm the silence, erase any lingering remnants of a past that should have remained buried. The first fleet to arrive in the dead system never returned. Not a distress call, not a warning, just sudden, absolute silence. The second fleet, twice as large, followed. It managed to send back a single burst transmission before vanishing. A single image, blurred and distorted, but unmistakable. A ship, black as the void. No markings, no known design. But it was there, drifting silently like a ghost in the ruins of an old human colony. Panic gripped those who saw the image. The ship was unlike anything in the galactic archives. No engine signatures matched. No records existed. It was advanced, beyond anything the great empires had in their fleets. And yet it carried a presence that sent a chill through those who had studied the wars of the past. It felt human. A minor warlord, eager for glory, sent his own fleet to investigate. He did not believe the myths. Humans were gone. If some scavengers were using their name to spread fear, he would put an end to it. His armada arrived in the system with weapons primed and arrogance in their hearts. They broadcasted their challenge, demanding surrender. There was no response. Then, in the darkness of space, the unknown ship moved. It did not fire. It did not send warnings. It simply vanished from their sensors, gone as if it had never existed. Confusion spread among the warlord's fleet. How could an entire ship disappear? Then, without warning, one of their cruisers exploded. Not from a missile, not from a laser strike, just ripped apart in a burst of pure, silent destruction. Then another, and another. The warlord screamed orders, shields up, weapons ready, fire at anything that moved, but there was nothing. The ship remained unseen, a predator in the dark. The fleet fell one by one, and in the end, the warlord's flagship stood alone, drifting among the wreckage of his once mighty armada. A transmission crackled through the empty void, breaking the silence. A voice, cold and steady. You were warned. The flagship was left intact, not as mercy, but as a message. A single survivor returned to the Senate, his mind broken, his voice shaking. He spoke of ghosts. He spoke of impossible technology. He spoke of humanity's return. The great empires held emergency meetings. Fear spread among the ruling elite. They had cast humanity into the abyss long ago. They had erased them from history. Yet now, something had come back, and it was stronger than before. More fleets were sent, this time from the most powerful factions. Each one vanished into the silent void, swallowed by the unknown force lurking in the dead systems. No remains were found, no transmissions were intercepted. It was as if they had never existed. Then, for the first time in centuries, a human ship entered galactic space. It did not come in secret. It did not hide. It arrived in the heart of the Senate's homeworld, drifting past layers of defense stations and orbital fleets, untouched. The ship hovered above the capital planet, watching, studying. It did not respond to hails. It did not answer calls. And then, across every screen, every frequency, a single message appeared in bold, unshakable words. We remember everything. The Ulnari fleet never stood a chance. One moment, they had complete control, holding Earth hostage, their weapons locked onto the ruins of humanity's past. The next, their systems collapsed. Engines failed. Shields flickered. Weapons refused to fire. Even the emergency escape pods locked shut, trapping them inside their own ships. Panic spread through the Ulnari command network. All systems unresponsive. We're locked out. Who's doing this? Something's moving out there. And then the first ship vanished. Not destroyed. Not blasted into debris. It simply disappeared from every scanner, every radar, as if it had been erased from existence. Then another. And another. Ulnari commanders screamed orders, but no one could hear them. Every ship in the fleet was isolated, as if trapped in its own reality. The crews could see their sister ships, but their messages were met with silence. And in the darkness of space, a new terror spread. Humanity was not just fighting them. Humanity was erasing them. On the bridge of the Ulnari flagship, Grand Warlord Davos felt true fear for the first time in his life. The cold, calculating race he belonged to had conquered dozens of worlds, crushed civilizations, and rewritten history itself. But this was different. This was revenge. Who are you? He demanded into the silent void. What do you want? A voice answered. A single human voice. You forgot about us. But we never forgot you. The attack was over in minutes. When the rest of the galaxy learned of the Ulnari's fate, there was nothing left to find. No wreckage, no survivors, no distress beacons. The entire fleet had been wiped from existence. Only Earth remained, untouched. The message was clear. No one would threaten humanity again. The Galactic Council descended into chaos. The greatest empires, the rulers of the stars, all found themselves afraid. For centuries, they had feared each other, rival warlords, ambitious leaders, the occasional rebellion. But now, there was something worse. Something they couldn't understand. Something they couldn't stop. The Council's most powerful members gathered in secret. This is an extinction event, the Ketheri High Lord rasped. If we do not act now, we will all be erased. The humans have no fleets, no empire. They are outnumbered. We must unite, crush them before it is too late. But another voice, deep and ancient, spoke from the shadows. You misunderstand, said the Supreme Chancellor of the Zerveth Dominion. This is not a war we can win. It is a war we have already lost. Silence. And then, in the cold depths of space, humanity moved again. Their war was not over. It was only just beginning. The news spread like wildfire. Every empire, every faction, every ruler who had once believed humanity was nothing but a forgotten name in history now stood on edge. The Zedrak Dominion's mighty fleet, crippled without a single shot fired. The Galactic Senate's capital, breached without resistance. And that message burned into the minds of all who ruled the stars. You tried to erase us. Now we will remind you who we are." No one knew where the human ship had gone. It had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. But they all knew one thing: humanity was watching. In the hidden chambers of the Supreme Council, the most powerful leaders of the galaxy gathered. Holograms of warlords, high admirals, and planetary rulers flickered across the vast room, their voices filled with unease. The Terrans must be found. Supreme Chancellor Evol of the Ketheri Empire said, his scaled fingers tapping against the marble table. "Whatever technology they have, it surpasses anything we possess. If they decide to strike." "They already have." Admiral Velcor interrupted, his face pale, haunted. "And you saw what they did to my fleet." "They didn't destroy you," an Ulnari warlord muttered, his cybernetic eye whirring as he reviewed the battle logs. "If they wanted war, you wouldn't be here. None of you would." A chilling silence followed. He was right. The humans had the power to erase fleets, to bypass defenses, to appear and disappear at will. And yet, they hadn't attacked. They had sent a message. But what did they want? Across the galaxy, paranoia grew. Fleets were recalled. Defenses were reinforced. The Council issued emergency decrees, warning all empires to remain on high alert. Spies were dispatched to search for anything related to humanity. Every record, every forgotten archive, every whisper of old Earth was analyzed. Yet no trace of their return could be found, until the attacks began. It started in the Outer Rim, where slaver ships operated freely, trafficking the weak and the forgotten. One night, an Ulnari slaver convoy disappeared without a trace. No distress calls, no wreckage. The slavers were there, then they were gone. Days later, an entire pirate stronghold was found emptied. No bodies, no survivors, no signs of a struggle. Just abandoned weapons, silent ships, and a single message left behind on their main terminal. No more. The next target was a warlord's stronghold, infamous for its brutality. The planet was a fortress, its defenses impenetrable. And yet, when the first patrol ship arrived to check on the warlord, they found the city burning. His armies, his elites, his enforcers, all gone. Only civilians remained, dazed and confused, whispering of shadows in the night and figures that moved like ghosts. They came. They left. They took everything. Panic swept through the underworld. The slavers, the pirates, the warlords, they had all once profited from humanity's fall. Now, they were being hunted. But it wasn't just criminals who were afraid. The great empires saw what was happening, and they understood the real message. The forgotten children of Earth were cleaning the rot from the galaxy. And soon, the rulers of the stars knew they would not be spared.